Hello, SpongicX here, and today I'm going to talk about a pretty underrated TV series back from 2006, and I think it ran until 2010. So, who remembers Viva Pinata for Xbox 360? It was a very experimental and pretty interesting idea for a game. It was basically a nature simulator, but with living pinatas. It was a very silly game, but very beautiful at the same time. However, maybe some of you didn't know this, but there was also a TV show of this going on at the same time, and I believe this was the only show out of a rare property to ever get the TV series treatment. I mean, yeah, there was originally a pitch for Battletoads, but that was pretty bad. It didn't even last a pilot, so it didn't even look like the source material. It looked more like one of those awful old Funimation or Hanna-Barbera shows. So, Viva Pinata, the TV series, it strongly resembles the video game it's from, and arguably I could say it looks a little better. I mean, it's jarring when you see the character designs from the show and then look back at how they looked in the games, and their eyes just look way too small, and I don't know, but um, yeah, for a show from 2006, the animation was really good for its time, and unfortunately, there doesn't seem to be any official way to watch this show. I mean, God, this show has really been neglected over the years. It was by the infamous studio 4Kids, and this was probably one of the only good shows I remember from them because 4Kids had the reputation of dubbing popular anime and really toning them down for American audiences. And so, fans of the original source material would always compare to how the Japanese versions were so much better. I mean, this is the studio that brought us the English dubs of Sonic X, Yu Gi Oh!, the original run of Pokemon. And so it's like there were a few shows that some people might have liked from 4Kids though, like Kirby or the 2000s version of the Ninja Turtles. But I personally wasn't that huge of a fan of 4Kids though. It's like I only watched it for Kirby and Sonic, but I'll admit Viva Pinata was a show I got into really late, and I started loving the show. But then of course it got canceled just when I was starting to get into it, and um, at the time I kind of ignored the show. Well, it's like there are times where I wanted to watch a show, it just wasn't on at a convenient time, and but I was familiar with the video games though. I was a huge fan of them, especially since I'm a huge fan of Rare in general. Viva Pinata was one of the last games by Rare I actually really enjoyed. After that, I just avoided them. I did not care for the Connect Sports. I don't even care for their modern attempts like Sea of Thieves or even the upcoming game they're coming out with, Everforce, or I can't remember its name, but I didn't think it looked that great. It just looked like it was trying too hard to copy off the charm of Breath of the Wild or something. I don't know, but I miss the old platformer days and all that. But despite how this wasn't a platformer, though, everything about it still felt like a Rare game, though. It had that similar art style and the colorful nature and some of the wacky humor that Rare was known for. So, anyways, Viva Pinata, it had a TV series, and it was a comedy. And although there are some major differences, it's funny how strongly the show resembles the source material. I mean, not only does it seem like they recycle some of the models in the game, or at least the designs of them, but they even have a lot of shoutouts that only people who played the games would understand. And so, yeah, the TV show is more recommended for those who have played the games and enjoy them. So, for those who've never played Viva Pinata, you can definitely play it if you have an Xbox One. It's on not only Rare Replay, but also Xbox Game Pass, so it's a very accessible game. So this is a series that was pretty popular when it first came out. I'm not sure if it was a financial success, but it's just a shame that the series just disappeared. I mean, Microsoft heavily promoted the series back then. I mean, ever since its first commercial, its TV show tie-in. Heck, it even had a Burger King kids meal promotion. Yeah, they had toys of this thing. It even got a PC port. So a lot of people try acting like Sea of Thieves is the first Rare game to go multi-platform, be for both Xbox One and PC. But no, Viva Pinata actually was. Although they didn't launch simultaneously, the fact that the game was popular enough to even get a PC port was pretty crazy at a time where Xbox just wanted Xbox games to be exclusive to their consoles, excluding the Halo franchise, because occasionally those got PC ports. But it's funny how it took them this long to finally make more Halo games. But so Viva Pinata, not only did it get a PC port, but it even got a DS game. Yeah, like that's crazy how a series that was exclusive to Microsoft even got a Nintendo spin-off. And this was around the time when Microsoft or Rare, I mean, this was around the time when they were done making those handheld spin-offs for Game Boy and stuff like that, cuz although they were bought out by Microsoft around the 2000s, it was interesting how they were still making Game Boy Advance games. So you'd see them release games of Banjo-Kazooie on the Game Boy Advance and stuff like that. And so this was quite some time after that. But yeah, the fact that Viva Pinata even got a DS game. So the series had 4 games altogether throughout like a run of 3 years probably. The first one came out in 2006. The second one was not a real sequel to the game. It was more of a spin-off to the TV show called Party Animals, and it wasn't really good. It even got an episode that was a tie-in with that, but the third one, well, I think I can't tell which ones came first. I think they came out around the same time, but around 2008 when Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts came out, that's when the sequel Trouble in Paradise came out, along with the spin-off for DS, Pocket Paradise. And in my opinion, I think Trouble in Paradise is the best entry in the series. It's basically the first game, but better. It's got more to do, and so it makes the first one feel obsolete in comparison. I'm sorry, I talked about the video games long enough. Let's get on to the TV show finally. So, in the original video games, the pinatas were treated like wild animals. They couldn't talk or anything, and you had all these human NPCs you had to interact with to help you take care of the pinatas, and you also had to protect the pinatas from incoming dangers, and so it very much felt like some kind of virtual pet simulator, but with more emphasis on real-life nature. How, like, some of these pinatas would hunt each other down, so you either get to allow it or try to prevent it from happening. And so, in the TV series, it's more of a show through the perspective of the pinatas. There aren't any of the human characters we came to know from the video games, although the main villain of the series is in it, and it's funny how they took one of the worst parts of the video game and they turned him into one of the best parts of the show with the villain Professor Pester. He's just a crazy man who's desperate for candy, and he just wants to bash open these pinatas and eat their candy. So he's one of those silly villains where he's always scheming and he always fails, no matter how close he gets or far he gets. And I don't know, there's just something about Professor Pester. It reminded me of Dr. Draken from Kim Possible. He really reminded me of someone you would see like John DiMaggio playing. I don't think it was his voice though, but man, it sounds similar to him.
But first, it's pinata time. Leaving so soon? We're only just getting started.
So, which one is the birthday boy?
Oh, they all are. They're quadruplets.
Do they have names?
Of course they have names. That's Billy, that's Bobby, that's Susie, and that's, Billy.
You have 2 kids named Billy?
Well, they spell it differently.
So the main characters in this are just wild pinatas that interact with each other. They get into silly misadventures. So it's like there are 4 main prominent characters, more like 2 if you ask me though, because it's like there are 2 characters they seem to focus on the most. In season 1 they especially focus on Fergie Fudgehog, but season 2 they definitely overdid it with Hudson Horsdashio. But so yeah, the main characters in this, the one that they definitely show the most early on in the series is Fergie Fudgehog, and I can't tell whether I love or hate this character, because he's a very unlikable character, but you just can't help but just like him. He's a real whiny character. He's very cowardly, very selfish, and it's like he'll turn his back on anyone when he gets the chance. And so yeah, the pinatas get selected to get sent to the human world to entertain at a party, which basically means getting beaten up for candy. And so in the video games, it explained that when the pinatas get destroyed, they regenerate over time. It's like they magically reassemble. In the TV show, though, it's treated a little more brutally, though.
I would very much like to perform for you
The characters will fall into pieces and they will not reassemble. And So the show does have a little more explanation for the lore of the series, though. So it's like you're wondering, how did the pinatas get fixed, though? It explains that there is a hospital where they have like scientists or professors to reassemble them. And oddly enough, the doctors are pinatas themselves. Sometimes it's portrayed by this little mole character. Other times it's portrayed by like this literal quack, a duck pinata. And so yeah, it just varies on episode. This show has some very loose continuity at times. So on Pinata Island, the way the pinatas get sent to parties is through Pinata Central. There's a giant tower shaped like a pinata, but it's actually a cannon, and they call it the Cannonada. And so when pinatas have their candiosity meter full, which was an element from the video games, the more you feed and take care of your pinatas, the happier they'll get, and they'll fill what's called their candiosity meter. And so in this show, they actually explain how the pinatas are able to read their candiosity meters. They have like this little phone app, and it not only tells them how to run their lives, but it even tells them how much their candiosity meter is. And so when their candiosity meter is full, they're required to go to those parties. They go to the cannon, get sent off to the human world, and I don't really think it's explained how they get back, though, but it's implied that some pinatas venture over to the human world and bring back the remaining pieces for repair, because there is an episode that does confirm, like, it shows, like, some of the broken pinatas who just came back from parties, and they're on a conveyor belt for repairs, and so, yeah, it's a very silly show, and so you'd think, like, pinatas getting sent to parties would be a bad idea or something. You'd think pinatas would hate it, and no, most of them seem to enjoy it. They think it's an honor to bring joy to children, and they know they're going to come back just fine in the end because of the repairs. But then there are two main characters who definitely are the only pinatas who do not want to get sent to parties, and that is Fergie Fudgehog and his best friend Polly Pretzel. So I already mentioned about Fergie. He's a very cowardly character. He's constantly running away from the pinata hunter, Langston Lickitoad, voiced by Mike Pollock, otherwise known as the voice of Dr. Eggman, starting from Sonic X all the way to the present. And so Langston Lickitoad, it's hard to call him whether he's a hero or a villain, because it's like early on in the series, he's just a character trying to do his job. And then in later episodes, he definitely takes some malicious pride in trying to send Fergie to parties. It almost makes him seem like a villain all of a sudden. So he's a very neutral character. He's a good guy or a bad guy, depending on how you look at him. And he was a pretty amusing little conflict kind of character, though. And it is funny how throughout the show, it's like he's constantly trying to catch Fergie and Polly, but he just never succeeds. And even there are times where he does succeed, but something backfires. And I'll get to that in a later episode, but so, Polly Pretzel, he was a pretty enjoyable character, too. He didn't get too many solo episodes. He's mostly, just a foil or companion for Fergie, and he's probably one of the smarter pinatas on the island. He's just very wisecracking, very sarcastic, and, he's just a no-nonsense pinata. He's a little sassy as well, and, it helps that I liked Fudge Hogs and Pretzels in the video game, so I thought it helped that they made two of the main characters, and I just can't help, but it's funny to compare. So this is another show where Mike Pollock plays a character who's trying to capture a hedgehog who happens to have a fox as a best friend. Ring a bell? So the third main character, who's definitely the one who took over the series, and he's definitely the mascot of the series, and that's Hudson Horstachio. And he's voiced by Dan Green, surprisingly, who is most known as the voice of Knuckles from Sonic X, or Yugi or Yami from Yu-Gi-Oh! And so he usually plays more serious, tough guy kind of characters, and so it's funny to see him play a real silly character who can just act all cartoony, and it works. I mean, 4Kids voice actors have had some pretty bad reputations for ruining some classic anime, the way, like, they portrayed some characters just didn't work. Maybe it's hard to tell if it was the writing or the voice direction, but there's something about this show where they just work off it a lot better, and it helps that this was a show made for 4Kids. It wasn't an adaptation of, it wasn't a dub. It was, this was a show that even Rare was involved with, apparently. It was a cooperation between 3 different studios. 4Kids was mostly responsible for the voice acting. Rare was, needed for the concept, and then there was a third studio, I can't remember the name, but they were the animators, and they have, a pretty big resume. They've worked on movies from, the DreamWorks era, when they made films like Prince of Egypt, Road to El Dorado, and So yeah, it definitely explains why the animation is pretty good for TV show standards. So Hudson, though, I just felt like I don't know. I just felt like season two really hammered him in. There were just way too many episodes about him, and I honestly thought some of the episodes about him were the worst. It's just like they were too repetitive. It's always about like the world turning against him, and or he's just getting into so many misfortunes, and it just got tiring after a while. It was more amusing to see characters like Fergie get into misfortunes because he's such a flawed character, though. So it's kind of funny to see him get his comeuppance. But Hudson, it's like he had some very mean spirited episodes. It was kind of hard to watch. Yeah, the show can have some pretty mean spirited moments at times. So it's hard to say if this is a light-hearted show or a mean-spirited show. It depends, but they're pinatas though, and they're always fine by the next episode. But I don't know. Hudson, he was pretty much a flamboyant prima donna. He was basically the most famous pinata on the island, and so you think that would make him the most unlikable character because usually in shows, characters like that are very unlikable. They're almost villains, and they somehow manage to find a good balance between Hudson though. It's like he is a pretty selfish character. Like he is self-absorbed, but he's caring about others too. He actually does, he cares about his friends and he wants to see them happy, and so that's what makes him a more interesting kind of famous celebrity character. He's not just the stereotypical self-absorbed character with an ego problem. You see how he has feelings just like everyone else, and so the fourth main character is Franklin Fizzly Bear, and he's a pretty likable character too. Oddly enough, he probably had the least amount of episodes out of the main cast, though. I mean, he's one of the main four animals, but it's like you barely see him in many episodes. He barely gets his own episodes as well, and he's mostly like a surfer dude. He's just a very chill guy, and he just can't tell lies. He's just so honest, and he wants to do his best to not hurt people's feelings, and I don't know, there's just something I really like about that character. And then after that, you have a few reoccurring characters who could be considered part of the main characters, but they don't get as much screen time as the others. And so we have Ella Elfanilla, and she's the stereotype of she's like the opposite of the stereotype of an elephant never forgets. She's the elephant who always forgets, and so she's basically Dory from Finding Nemo. And so the poor thing, it's like she means well, but she's just so forgetful, and that's basically the joke of her. She did get some pretty good episodes, though. Usually, some episodes do a really good job at making episodes that have to do with her memory loss, like whether it's the conflict she causes because someone hired her to do something and she messed up and didn't even realize it because she forgot, or one of the later episodes was one where she actually forgot to forget, and so she's suddenly remembering things because she forgot how to forget. It's just so random but so funny. And then there's Les Galagugu, and this guy is the unsung hero of the show. Like, he's one of the most misfortunate characters in the whole show. He's the smartest pinata. The problem is that he cannot speak English.
I guess helping isn't a word in Les's vocabulary.
No one can understand him, so he always has really bright ideas on how to save the day or how to help everyone out, but no one can take him seriously. They see him as a nuisance, actually, and so you always see episodes where he's trying so hard to save the day, but he just angers everyone in the process, and no one understands him. So he always just shrugs it off or face palms, and heck, there's even an episode where he finally managed to learn how to speak English, and people still won't listen to him. It's just, this character's just destined to always be ignored. It's so sad, and you can't help but root for him, though. And then the last of the main characters are definitely the worst, in my opinion. Like, they had some of the worst episodes, and so it's the Twinger Snaps. I think their name was Teddington and Terry. And so basically one of them sounds like they're voiced by Rouge the Bat from Sonic X, and the other sounds like James from Pokemon.
I know, I was there. Just eat. It all ends up in the same stomach anyway.
You're right.
And so basically their shtick is, let's just take two-headed snakes and replace them with Phil and Lil. That's what it is. It's Phil and Lil as snakes, but they sound like Rouge and James arguing with each other. So their shtick is that they're stuck with each other and they're always disagreeing with each other. And yeah, they just had some of the worst episodes. They were really boring, kind of mean spirited too, and I just did not like them. They were the worst characters in the show, in my opinion. Aside from the characters, there's also a little bit more of lore from the world of Viva Pinata that was explained in the TV show. So some of you are probably wondering, so like, were the pinatas like handmade or something? Like, were they made by some kind of human overlord? Or, well, it's explained that pinatas have lived ever since as far back as dinosaur times. There was like one episode that starts off showing how even cavemen were hunting down pinatas. And that's how the celebration of pinatas were invented, basically, because cavemen would chase them around with clubs, and so they turned that into a little party game for kids, basically. So yeah, you think like the show would avoid like showing any humans or anything like that, since none of the human characters from the video games appear in this, but they do acknowledge that humans are in this world. You'll sometimes they sometimes show like meanwhile at a kid's party, and you'll see like they show like the arms and legs and bodies of the kids, but they never show their faces. They always hide them off at certain camera angles, but it's still interesting to know that they didn't shy away from implying that humans are there. And yeah, even Professor Pester, it's implied that he's a human wearing like a weird outfit, and like you can definitely tell because underneath his mask you can kind of see like his neck, and you can even see his bare arm. So it's implied that he's a human. Instead of a monster or something. He looks like a monster though, but and so they also have like the boss, there's a boss of the pinata, so it's implied that he's possibly a human, but you never see him. Instead, you hear his voice. They have this running gag where whenever they show him, you see like the pinatas walk into his office at pinata headquarters, and there's just like this bowl of fruit with a walkie-talkie in it, and so it's like he's just such a busy man. He's never physically there, so he's always elsewhere, talking back at headquarters through a walkie-talkie or some kind of communicator. And so it's just a funny running gag where it's like at first you think like, is the boss a talking bowl of fruit or something? And it's like, no, it's just that's what the pinatas are supposed to talk to in order to talk to them. It's such a weird concept, but it's so funny. They even explain the lore of where the Sour Pinatas came from. So in the video games, you have the good pinatas and you have the really bad pinatas, which were basically the wild pests. They would invade your garden. They had like more menacing appearances. They always came in like red and black color schemes with green glowing eyes. They really resembled Professor Pester and his ruffians. And so I love how the show actually explained that they were a creation of his, and I thought that worked really well. There was a pretty memorable episode towards the end of Season 1 where it showed a flashback of how Professor Pester created his worst disaster, and that was the Sour Pinatas. And so it goes back to when he was back in college, and I just love how if you look closely in the background, you'll see there are these paintings of two legendary rare villains, Gruntilda from Banjo-Kazooie, and okay, maybe not legendary, but a more obscure one. So the more obscure one is Baron Von Ghoul from Grabbed by the Ghoulies. And there's even a later episode where Professor Pester kidnaps a bunch of hyenas, and in the background you once again see the Baron Von Ghoul picture in the background. I just thought that was really cool how they snuck in these. It's like, oh, if only there was a Panther King reference somewhere. But so anyways, we learned that he invented the Sour Pinatas. He did it as a scheme to get people to stop wanting pinatas so he could take them in for himself, basically. So he wanted to create evil pinatas that only produce sour candy. So kids would eat it, get disgusted with it to the point where they don't want pinatas anymore. That would leave Pinata Island overflowing with wild pinatas, not getting shipped off to parties, which would make them easier to catch for Pester. So yeah, Pester's a very screwy villain. He does not think very logically, despite his name being Professor. And it's heck, there's even one episode where he tries like throwing his own fake party. He hijacks Pinata Central to send one of the pinatas to a random place in Pinata Island. He disguises it as a human home and pretends to be a mother, and he even has these ruffians, his minions, pretending to be his kids. It's a really funny episode, but this episode basically confirms he did not go to school. You see him trying to sing his ABCs on a piano at one point, and yeah, the results are pretty hilarious.
A, B, C, D, E, F, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z, and O.
It's like he tries acting like he's a really smart character, but we all know he really isn't. There's a funny running gag in the series where every time he gets defeated, he always says, "I have no regrets." And it's just funny how, like, you can see him getting beaten to a pulp, losing miserably, and he'll always say that. It's just so funny regardless. Yeah, I definitely thought Pester was one of the better characters in the show. It's too bad he barely showed up, oddly enough, and there weren't enough episodes dedicated to him. But, okay, let's get on to the episodes themselves. So, I'm not going to actually sit here and explain every single episode to you guys, but I'm going to mention the ones that I thought were some of the more memorable or some of the weirder ones. But, so one that definitely comes to mind is the episode where they decide to form a band and they hire a Sour Pinatas to be their lead singer, which leads to this.
It's our singer is what it is.
What? Fergie, we can't let a sour in the band. They're out of control.
Every rock band needs a bad boy.
Here, Pierce. Pierce? Rock and roll name. Gotta call him something. Come on, Piercy. That's it. Woohoo! Play the chorus. Rock candy. Give me rock candy. So it's not real, it's not for living on high. What I say, I'm on the list, we roll on the water. It's a good rock candy. We got a band. We sure do.
I don't know why, I just thought it was so funny, and so eventually the gang get annoyed with him to the point where they try calming him down, and they feed him a toadstool, which reforms him, basically. And so that was an element from the video games, where you could tame the Sour Pinatas to turn back into regular Pinatas. And so it's like for a Profitable, you had to feed it a toadstool, which required finding a mushroom, and you had to hire like a tinker to mess with it to, you know, make it less poisonous and all that. And so once you feed a Profitable a toadstool, they'll be reformed. So it was funny how the show portrayed it, where you see him as a mad wild animal, then all of a sudden he's reformed. All of a sudden he's talking very politely in a British accent. And
Oh, cheerio there. Can I help you, chaps?
Oh, I think he's lost his memory. How absolutely tragic.
Are you certain you wouldn't prefer doing something with a bit more zip? Little Mozart, Beethoven, perhaps?
We're sure. Right. 3, 4.
Oi, oi, oi.
Another episode had to do with where Polly Prestail tries to make some pies out of raisins, but unfortunately he didn't realize those were not raisins. They were, let's say, tuna corn droppings. So he feeds everyone the pie except for himself and Fergie, and all of a sudden everyone starts acting like their opposite selves. Apparently there was some magic in that tuna corn droppings where it caused everyone to start acting like their opposite selves. And so yeah, it's a real funny gimmick. I don't know why, I just thought it was real funny to see these characters acting far beyond themselves. I always like it when episodes do that, where they experiment how would a character act if they weren't themselves. And
Yes. I can't remember the last time those two agreed on something.
No offense, Ella, but you can't remember anything.
Wait a minute. I can remember. It was September 17th at 12:46 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Something's off here. Why?
I believe that I might be able to provide a plausible explanation.
Les? Since when can you talk?
Since the moment I sampled that delectable raisin pie, it bequeathed upon me the ability to converse. Don't you see? Those raisin pies turn everyone into their opposite.
Wait, I figured it out. It's the raisin pies. They turn everyone opposite.
another crazy, like, this is a pretty infamous episode. I've heard some people say, like, this is one of the strangest episodes, especially for what's supposed to be a kid show, but cannibalism. So, in this episode, Fergie, he goes to a dance and he decides to bring a chocolate bunny cone, and for some reason he decides to say it's his cousin, which just makes it even more creepier. He brought his cousin to a dance. But, so originally he was actually supposed to bring a chocolate bunny comb as, a treat for everyone to share, but he got selfish and wanted it for himself, so he disguised it as his cousin, and everyone falls for it. But then his temptation for hunger gets himself a little too carried away to the point where we get these really weird, pretty perverted-looking reactions. So Fergie ends up eating the chocolate bunny comb, and everyone suspects he ate his cousin, and he's suddenly put on trial. And they even restrain him like Hannibal Lecter, and so he would rather consider himself a cannibal than confess to his crime, basically, of being selfish. And it's like, wow, he would rather be a cannibal than call himself selfish. That's crazy. And so the episode ends where he finally breaks and he tries admitting his fault, but it's too late. They launch him into space towards the moon, and then right after, this happens.
Dudes, this is a receipt for a large chocolate bunny comb. Why, you don't suppose...
As the presiding judge, I think I speak for everyone when I say, oops.
Just great. The rest of my life on this cold, lifeless rock. One small step backward for justice, one giant buffet for me. Woohoo!
So yeah, it's just, the show, it can be really zany sometimes. It's just very illogical, but you just can't help but laugh at how messed up it is at times, especially for a kid's show. So this next episode is a really funny one, where a Bon Boon, or should I say a Con Boon, so a con man baboon pinata tries tricking Fergie into going on a rocket ride into space, basically, for he tries conning him out of all of his candy. So Fergie falls for it, and he, after a lot of incidents, he ends up crashing out of the simulation. He gets covered in green paint, and he has like a diver helmet on, thinking it's a space helmet, and so he's walking around thinking he's on an alien world. Meanwhile, others on the island mistaken him for an actual alien.
Ooh, an alien habitat.
Although it's a huge honor to win the Pinata Peace Prize, I must say that I'm not surprised. Oh! Ah! An alien! No!
What's going on?
Put this on so the alien can't steal your thoughts.
Alien? What alien? And how do you know he can steal thoughts?
Is that what I said? I don't remember. He got me.
Oh no! Look! The alien!
That's no alien, you lunkheads! That's Fergie! Fergie? Sure! I'd recognize that ridiculously shaped body anywhere!
It is Fergie! Thank goodness! Let's get him!
Aliens! Fergie, why are you wearing that crazy looking thing?
They don't speak English.
After him, guys, before he hurts himself!
Fergie! Fergie!
Alien freaks.
Another really wacky and bizarre episode was actually the season 1 finale, this was an episode I actually do remember tuning into when it was still on 4Kids TV, and that is the $6 Million Pinata. And so it's an episode where after Fergie gets into a really serious mishap, he's nothing but a broken head now, and so he gets repaired by a crazy profitable doctor and is reinvented as a cyborg pinata, and he has to wear this little face mask over his nose in order to keep his powers in check. And so he's like, at first he starts showing off, and everyone loves his new abilities to the point where he thinks he can handle everything, and so he's just happily obliging to helping people out with their problems. But eventually the pinata's overworked him to the point where his face mask falls off of his nose, and he loses control and turns into a giant monster for no reason. And so the pinatas have to find a way to stop him before he destroys Pinata Central, and then we get this really bizarre ending right here.
Fire!
Say
What? I'm back here again. Except you don't have bionic parts this time. Oh, thank goodness.
What am I?
Another funny episode is Pester Pinata, where it starts off where Professor Pinata tries doing one of those old crazy schemes where the character decides to dress up as a baby so he can sneak around and, do his evil bidding. Basically, no one will suspect to harm an innocent child. And so you think it's going to be one of those episodes, but then when his mishap backfires terribly, he ends up getting amnesia while in the baby costume. So he's convinced he's now a baby pinata. And so the pinatas, especially Fergie, are forced to look after him until they can figure out how to get rid of him, basically. And it's a really silly episode. I actually did get a laugh out of this one.
Now I remember who I am.
Professor Pester!
I'm a pinata.
I think we lost him.
Who? Mommy!
Oh, brother.
Don't you mean son?
There's the episode where Hudson was getting a new toy line, and he had to go into a recording studio to record some lines for his new action figure. Unfortunately, they hired Ella Elfanilla to be the one who records the footage, and so after a huge mishap where Hudson is on the phone with like these contractor sweet tooth beaver pinatas, he's really angry with them because of something they did earlier in the episode. They built a dam in a swimming pool, and so he's angrily shouting at them for 3 hours long, and Ella managed to record all of that, and so she trimmed it and put it into the dolls. So when the dolls were unveiled, everyone is outraged when it comes to hearing his figure say stuff like this.
I'm smarter than you chowderheads! Marshmallow break, bozos! I hate you, I hate you, I hate you!
So, you think you're smarter than us?
And you hate us?
Dude, your doll's harshing my cheek.
Relax, guys. It's just a doll.
Fergie's a nitwit! Nincompoop! Bozo! Ding dong! Gigglehead!
Then there's the episode where Langston Lickatoad gets a visit from his Jamelian cousins, and they love to pull pranks on him by blending in and making Langston look crazy. And I don't know, it's such a mean-spirited episode, but I couldn't help but just find it hilarious.
Whoa! I don't believe what I'm seeing, or rather, what I wasn't seeing. Fergie Fudgehog, meet the Jamelian brothers. Jay, Jerry, and Junior.
Hello! You don't understand. I'm hiding from my invisible cousins who are controlling me against my will. I'm not crazy.
Sure you're not.
You gotta believe me. All I want to do is get you all to your parties before... What I mean is, no more parties!
Pinata Central is on permanent party hiatus!
What?
That's the most beautiful thing I've ever heard.
No, don't listen to them! Me! Stop! I'm not crazy! Please, Fergie, tell everyone who's really behind this!
Let me get something straight first. If I do that, then we have to go to parties, right?
Well, naturally. Hurry! You're the only one who knows the truth! Tell them I'm not crazy!
Friends, I have to tell you that Langston is not crazy.
Thank you!
But he is absolutely certified cuckoo bonkers.
Huh? No! I'm not crazy! I'm not! Believe me!
There's an episode where Les invented a jetpack and he loses it. Fergie ends up swallowing the jetpack, and it allows his hump to have jet thrusters pop out of it so he can fly around. And so he uses that as a way to escape from getting sent to parties whenever Langston tries capturing him. And so he then has to pull off the charade to make everyone convinced that he actually went to parties by beating himself up and make it look like he took some damage. And so eventually it comes to a point where his jetpack gets out of control, and then we lead to situations like this.
Polly,
That was really uncalled for, Fergie. You're gonna be the first one out. Now get yourself fixed up stat. Oh, and take Hudson, too.
You'll see, Fergs. Getting your head knocked off by happy children is a pinata's greatest joy. I can only hope it happens to you.
And there's a really dark but hilarious episode where, like, the implications of this is just really messed up. But so Fergie is getting sick of being stalked by Langston to the point where he approaches the man himself, the boss, and he tries asking him to let Langston let him go, basically. But little did Fergie know the boss actually walked out. So Fergie is stuck talking to an empty fruit bowl with a walkie-talkie in it. And so he's convinced that the boss is ignoring him. So it gets Fergie so upset to the point where this happens.
Pretty pleased with my candy on top? Well? So, I'm a pinata, born to be bashed to bits, that it? That's what you're saying, Mr. Big Boss Man? Ha! Ha! Answer me! Yes! Take that! And this! Eat stapler! Not so tough now, are ya? I am so going to jail.
Yeah, pretty messed up. And so eventually Fergie tries hiding the evidence by eating the fruit, and so he accidentally ate the walkie-talkie as well. And so now he hears the voice of the boss coming from inside him, and he's convinced that he's cursed by the boss's ghost. And then it leads to this crazy situation.
Get Langston in here!
In there?
You heard me. Langston, in here! Now!
Wait, the big boss wants you in here right away. In where? In here! Get away from me! He's trying to eat me!
There's this one episode where Langston gets so sick of Fergie and Polly avoiding parties that he hires a drill instructor named Eddie Eglair, and I think he was the same voice as King Dedede from Kirby Right Back At Ya, and yeah, this guy was hilarious, and it was just so funny to see Fergie and Polly, you know, basically outsmarting him and torturing him. I don't know, I just got a laugh out of this episode.
I'm Eddie Eglair, your motivational instructor.
How'd you get here so fast?
Motivation, motivation, motivation. Also, I can fly.
Here, this should make your fall. Ready? Aim! Fire! All right!
The wires are mixed up.
Wow, he's got Polly and Fergie screaming like little girls. Eddie's good.
Listen up to what I say.
Listen up to what he say.
We ain't going to no party.
We ain't going to no party.
Keeping our sweets is much preferred.
Keeping our sweets is much preferred.
Going to parties is for the birds.
There's one episode where, once again, because of Elfanilla getting given a job that she really shouldn't have been given, she ends up swapping everyone's candiosity meters around, and so it's established early on in the episode that everyone uses their candiosity meter for their daily routines. It reminds them of what to do, and I couldn't help but notice it was voiced by Lisa Ortiz, the original voice of Amy from SpongicX.
No time to eat. The show is starting. Polly is holding your seat. Les couldn't make it.
So yeah, the candiosity meter gets mixed up, and so everyone is, you know, dead serious to following the agendas on their candiosity meter, no matter how strange the results are. So we see crazy situations like Langston Lickatoad getting a Cluckles, a chicken pinata's, candiosity meter, which leads to this crazy moment.
That's it. Peck, peck, peck.
But I'm supposed to be running Pinata Central, not pecking corn. What could be more humiliating?
Now lay an egg.
Meanwhile, we see like how Fergie is getting chased by a worm who ended up getting Langston's. You just see how this little worm is struggling with trying to capture pinatas and sending them to parties. He's too small to activate the switch and all. It's just a really silly episode just to see all the shenanigans.
Wait! Wow! Sorry, little fella. I'm running from Langston. He wants to drag me to the Canonada.
Drag him to the Canonada.
Wait! Stop! Please! I'll do anything! I'll even be a celebrity! Wait! No!
Now push the red launch button.
Meanwhile, Les catches on to what's going on. He tries saving the day, but of course, no matter how hard he tries, he always never gets the credit he deserves. So, another really crazy episode is the one where this one just felt like a more kid-friendly version of the movie Step Brothers. It was where Fergie finds out that his mother got married to Hudson's gross uncle. And so it's like they're trying to act like they're brothers, but not brothers. So technically they're cousins, I guess. But so they're at Fergie's mom's house, and they have to try living with each other for a little bit, and they're acting like spoiled kids, and they're getting into fights, and it leads to this really funny ending.
All right, you two. If you can't behave, then we're going home.
Daddy is a stinky stink!
Stepdaddy is a stinky stink! Ding dong!
I'm rubber, you're stew.
It's glue.
It's stew! I call this
I
side.
call this side.
I
I want that side. Wait!
Your legs is untied.
What? Ow!
Gotcha.
Here, I can't take it anymore. The bickering, the name calling. Fergie, Fergie, Bo Fergie, banana, fanta, Bo Fergie,
Can't hear
five,
you.
Bo Fergie,
La, 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 la.
I can't take it anymore either. She's beautiful and smart. Fergie, Hudson, Francine and I have something we need to tell you.
What's that, Dad?
Stepdad. Well, kids, we've decided to split up. You're leaving each other? No, we're leaving you.
Joe, I don't know why, but one episode I thought was the funniest was Too Many Fergies. And this was an episode which was like a concept of the movie Groundhog Day, but with a cloning paradox. So, Fergie wakes up one morning and finds a clone of himself, and it turns out that that clone of him was actually from a day in the future. He found a time machine that somehow Les invented but accidentally lost. And so, a day from now, Fergie goes through that time machine and ends up back the previous day. And so, Fergie is actually enjoying being accompanied by himself. It's like the only person he can relate to, himself. And so, then the next morning, the clone of Fergie realizes he needs to send the original Fergie back in time so there doesn't cause a time paradox.
But I don't want to go back to yesterday! You have to, Fergie! I did! Do I have to do everything you do? Don't you ever watch sci-fi? If you don't do everything I do, it will change history! That could destroy the fabric of the entire universe! I could live with that. Then please! I get time machine sick!
The original Fergie ends up dragging the clone Fergie in with him, and so now there's 3 Fergies in the previous day, and so eventually they get the idea that as long as they keep going back in time the day after, there will be a multiple army of Fergies that they can interact with. And so at first Fergie seems to be enjoying this, but then eventually we see how Fergie's really getting sick of this, and it leads to what I think is one of the funniest parts of the show.
Great! I can't even find a place to sleep! Will you keep me down?
Yeah, I don't know. I just really love this episode. It was just really funny, and it helps that fudge hogs are some of my favorite animals from the Viva Pinata series. So just seeing an episode about a bunch of fudge hogs running around was just really funny and adorable at the same time.
Fergie! Langston! This is Langston. Come out or...
Yeah, that's the Viva Pinata TV series. And yeah, it's a guilty pleasure for me. Like, I can't say it's a perfect show. Like, some jokes land, some don't. But it's just a really silly show. Because I remember liking it when I saw it back in high school, and I was wondering, oh god, I hope that show hasn't badly aged. I just remembered the show all of a sudden, and I actually looked up if there's a way to legally buy these episodes, and surprisingly, there is not, really. I was hoping you could buy, like, season 1 and 2 for $20 or $40 altogether, and no, you really can't. And it's like Amazon had a few episodes, only the first 10 episodes though, and but because the publishers of the show for kids, they went out of business, it's like there just doesn't seem to be any copyright claims for this show. And I mean, you think Rare or Microsoft would have took an interest in doing something with the show, and nope, they just left it to die basically. And I heard there was supposed to be a third season, but because of 4Kids, it just never happened. And so it just led to a lot of people uploading these episodes on YouTube, and they're not in the best quality though. And there is a playlist of season 1 and 2, but there's still a bunch of episodes missing on that. But some separate YouTubers uploaded even lower quality uploads of those episodes, and so I just ended up binging the whole series, wishing I could have bought them in HD. But so I watched all the episodes, and yeah, it's just as funny as I remember. It's a really silly show, and I enjoyed revisiting the show and seeing all the episodes I missed and seeing all the little jabs and parodies, and it was just a really fun show, and it just made me go like, darn, if only this show was more successful. I would have loved to have seen Rare tackle more TV shows of their franchises. I would have loved to have seen, like, whether it's on Netflix or HBO Max, what if we got a family show for Banjo-Kazooie, an adult show for Conker's Bad Fur Day, and more like a teen show for Cameo Elements of Power. It's like there are so many different licenses from Rare that could have made for different shows for different audiences, and it just saddens me that Viva Pinata is the only one to get away with that treatment, because I just can't help but watch the show and imagine how great it would have been to see Banjo, Conker, and Cameo get the same treatment. Have their own little episodes, their own shenanigans, or their own conflicts, and that would have been really fun to see. I would have loved that. But for what it is, this is the only Rare show we ever got, and it's like the closest thing we had to a Rare show is the new Battletoads 2020, because that felt more like, although it had gameplay, it felt more like a cartoon, if anything, and it was pretty funny, though. Like, I didn't think the game itself was that great, but I did enjoy the cutscenes, and that they were pretty funny. Well, so yeah, I just really hope that someday Rare can change their mind to make more shows, or Microsoft, whoever's in charge. But I know we were originally supposed to get a Banjo-Kazooie TV show around the same time as Viva Pinata, but there were just too many differences in the direction of how the show went, to the point where they gave up, which is a real shame. But there was some leaked artwork recently that showed some of the redesigns they had in mind for Banjo, and I was like, why did they need a redesign in though? Why didn't they just try making a faithful appearance of how he looked in the N64 games, or like so it would have came out around the same time as Nuts and Bolts. However, it was not going to be an adaptation of Nuts and Bolts, although they were going to make some episodes that tied in with the game though. And so yeah, it sounds like Banjo would have been a very similar show to Viva Pinata, just the characters from the games and silly shenanigans. And then Cameo, although that never had a show planned, it did have a movie planned, but the game just didn't sell very well, so Microsoft dropped plans for a movie adaptation, but that's too bad, because there was a lot of lore and interesting story elements in Cameo that did not end up in the final game, and it would have been interesting to see a movie or series explore more of that. And I mean, Cameo practically is the original Ben 10 after all, so I mean, that was a pretty popular series, so that just goes to show that Cameo could have worked as a series, having a magical girl who can transform into 10 different monsters. And I really feel like I'm surprised Microsoft never made a lawsuit over Ben 10. It was just too inconvenient. I mean, the fact that it's like, okay, you have a character who can transform into many different creatures. However, 10? Cameo, you could only transform into 10 creatures. And so it saddens me when there are some people who play Cameo and they think this reminds me of Ben 10. It's like, this came out before that. It was even planned long before that. Like, this was a game that was being planned on as far back as the N64 days. It was originally going to be made for GameCube. And but yeah, Viva Pinata, a very underrated video game series and TV series, but I think they are worth checking out. And it's especially, I definitely recommend playing the games first before watching the show. it helps make the show more enjoyable when you have a little more context on the world of Viva Pinata. Well, that's all I have to say for now. Thank you for watching. See you next time. Have a nice day.
Yeah!